Hello, and welcome back to I'll Have What She's Having, the place where we refuse to settle for anything less than passion, pleasure, and our most vibrant, turned on life. Today, I'm speaking with non-monogamy coach Megan Veaudry. She is a teacher of erotic autonomy, the founder of Non-Monogamy Coaching Vancouver, and a brilliant guide for anybody wanting to create and sustain consensual non-monogamous relationships while maintaining a deep sense of erotic autonomy. Her work explores erotic energy as a life-giving force that is bigger than all of us. Megan is passionate, articulate, and has a way of making the entire spectrum of non-monogamous relating feel both accessible and deeply inspiring. If you're already well-versed in alternative relationship styles, wow, does she give us some good insights, new language, practical tools, and thought-provoking questions that we can take home and muddle over in order to make our relationships literal pieces of art. Because anything can be art when you give it enough conscious thought and attention. In this episode, we explore how to get crystal clear on your relationship goals, high versus low emotional and sexual autonomy, what to do if you're afraid to open up, or if you're the only partner who wants to, how to navigate different seasons and desires in a relationship, and Megan's top tips for communicating in both non-monogamous and monogamous relationships. Whether you're single and dating non-monogamously, a couple considering opening up, or already living as a non-monogamous person or in a non-monogamous relationship, there is something here for you. Because ultimately, a conversation about non-monogamy is a conversation about all relationships, about aligning values, having hard conversations, and choosing what you want and why. Before beginning, I want you to remember, if you've ever thought about non-monogamy, you're normal. If you've ever desired it, you're normal. If you've never desired it, you're also normal. Your desires are normal, whatever they are. And my hope for this episode is that it helps you understand what you truly want and gives you the tools to communicate it with clarity and confidence to the ones you love. Now, before we dive in, just a few quick announcements. First, we have only 2 spots left for our wonderfully transformative 3-day women's retreat this September on Bowen Island near Vancouver, Canada. It's called Wild Women Rising, and it is basically like a spa weekend for your sexuality. We dance around fires, we spend time naked in nature, we heal sisterhood wounds, we empower our sexuality, we do sex magic, and most of all, we get to be accepted for being exactly as we are. I am so honored to be hosting this space for the 2nd year in a row. And one testimonial from last year stated that it was like 10 years of therapy in one weekend, which sounds crazy, but if you've ever tried somatic work, you know that this kind of shift is definitely possible. Come join us. If this is calling you, apply now for one of these last 2 spots. The application link is in the show notes. I'll see you in the forest. And secondly, for those wanting to dive even deeper into reclaiming their sexuality, for those women who feel like it's a little dead down there, for those who want to feel sexy, alive, and like their highest, most empowered self, this is for you. I'm offering you a free 1-hour clarity call. Signing up for this call is claiming responsibility for your life and your ability to direct it, to be a conscious co-creator of your own reality, not just along for the ride, because you know that you've got some serious main character energy. Are you using it right now? You've got to put in the work. Discovering what you want is so much harder than figuring out how to get it. Once you know the what, the rest starts to fall into place. So schedule your free clarity call with me to get clear on what it is you want for your sex life or your relationship today. Use the link in the show notes, and I'll see you soon. All right, now on to this incredible podcast episode. What if pleasure was the key to unlocking everything you've ever wanted? Welcome to I'll Have What She's Having, the podcast where your pleasure is your power and you're allowed to want it all. I'm your host, Kris Hall, a sexual empowerment coach, and I'm here to help you unleash your inner fire. Every other week, you'll get expert advice, practical tools, and juicy inspiration to help you feel more confident, turned on, and fully in your power. Because you deserve the kind of love life that makes people say, I'll have what she's having. Hello, how's it going?
Good. Really good. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. Amazing to have you on today. I'm so excited to talk about non-monogamy. Okay, so let's dive right in. Can you tell us a little bit about your background, what your relationship status is, and how do you personally practice non-monogamy?
Absolutely. Yeah, what a great place to start. So, my name is Megan Veaudry, and I am the founder of Non-Monogamy Coaching Vancouver. And I have been non-monogamous for so long that it's just part of who I am. It's part of what I do. I really can't imagine my life any other way. Yeah. And so the particular kind of non-monogamy that I do, I call it descriptive hierarchy. So what that means is that me and I have a partner that I've been with for a long time, and we founded our relationship on the principles of monogamy. And so we describe very carefully what the entwinement of our relationship looks like so that we can create an environment where we can invite new people into our relationship if and when those relationships come up. Yeah, so I don't like to use the word primary partner, though that's what it looks like, and that's what folks generally think of when they think of non-monogamy. What I like to think about is I call him my nesting partner, and he's not primary in all areas of my life. For example, with me expressing my queer identity, he could never be primary because he's a man. So yeah, so it's a descriptive hierarchy is how I would describe it. And that's also kind of the lingo that we use in polyamory land.
Yeah, I feel like half of this could just be talking about the lingo and, like, straightening things out. Like, I even figured out, like, only a couple weeks ago truly what the difference between, like, a swinger and a non-monogamous person was, which we'll get into later, but, like, it was wild. I was like, "How did I not know that?"
Yeah, well, it's completely understandable because we don't really have a map for these things, right? Because in our society, monogamy is just seen as like the only option, and anything other than that is other, right? Anything other than that is unusual, it's risky, it's got all of these kind of things attached to it, whereas monogamy is assumed to be the correct choice and the thing that will make everyone happiest and will work out the best in the end for everyone.
Right? And, like,
Yeah.
"Ooh, let's limit each other so that we can make sure the other person doesn't stray," and it's like, well, no, what if people could just be expressed in themselves so
Mhm.
that they can live the most full life that they want to, and that makes them love you even more?
Absolutely. Yeah, and so this kinda gets into what my philosophy is behind non-monogamy, and how I like to think about it is we all have this erotic energy inside of us, and it's the energy of aliveness, and we all have a birthright to express this erotic energy, right? And I love to think about it in terms of erotic autonomy. So regardless if you're monogamous, if you're polyamorous, whatever, everyone really thrives the best when we have some kind of zone of erotic autonomy. Even if it's in our imagination, even if we're monogamous and we choose not to actually express ourselves sexually or romantically outside of our partnership or at all, if we're single, if we're not choosing to engage in relationship at that time, and then with non monogamy, we're expanding that zone of erotic autonomy, right? So we're getting so that we have more erotic autonomy, so that we are encouraging our partners and encouraging ourselves to express this erotic energy in whatever form it wants to take in ways that are going to be truly nurturing to us in our lives. So the whole point is to use that erotic energy to nurture our lives and nurture our relationships, and breaking down these assumptions about monogamy rather, is how we can really kind of get more of this erotic juice into our lives so that we're even more capable of thriving.
Oh, the erotic juice. Yes.
Yes.
I've I love this idea, and I think this is one of the first times that somebody's put it so succinctly for me, like,
Mm.
erotic autonomy. That truly is what it is, right? Because so many like, it's so odd to think that your partner is the person who controls your sex life, right? Or even that, like, you can't go outside of that. Like, it's so unique in everything else. Like, in any other way, like, we would never accept that our partner controls what we eat. So, why do we automatically accept that our partner controls who we fuck and how we express ourselves sexually, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah, and, I don't love the word control associated with relationships.
Oh,
Yeah. Like,
yeah,
we want love and we want freedom. I
absolutely.
feel like those are, like, very, very core universal human needs.
Yeah. So in
Yeah.
terms of your non-monogamous life, like, what does that truly offer you? What would be the top thing you think that it gives you?
It gives me the opportunity to allow each relationship to tell its own story. So if I were in a monogamous relationship, if me and my partner were monogamous and we had decided that our zone of erotic autonomy was quite small, maybe it was in fantasy and imagination, potentially in like talking to each other about our romantic or erotic interest in others, if that was the size of my zone of erotic autonomy, when I met someone else that I was inevitably for me, I will meet someone else who I'm attracted to. And when that happened, I would always wonder how that story could unfold. And so now, with the erotic autonomy that we've established in our relationship, I get to follow that thread through and see what happens. And for me, it's so freeing, first of all, to know that if I meet someone new, that's actually like a really good thing for me in my life, right? It's not threatening. It's not something that I have to be afraid of. And, I know that my partner, like he has said straight out to me, if you meet someone that you really get along with, you're going to want to spend a lot of time with them. And that's a good thing. And you should be able to do that. And so being able to follow that story, but know that I trust my relationship enough and I trust the uniqueness of my relationship enough that I can return to it and know that it's going to be there for me. That freedom is just so transformational.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally, right? It's
Yeah.
even the knowledge that you can tell your partner anything because
Mhm.
you've gone to the depths of, like, we can literally talk about anything on your mind, and you won't be rejected for it. You won't be othered. You won't be made to feel small. You won't be made to feel wrong about, like, "Hey, I had this thought. I had this attraction." And, like, being able to follow through your desires of, like, "Oh, this person's really interesting. I really want to express how I feel about this person." It's just being able, because I know that for some, like, monogamous folks, like, even, touch with other people that aren't your partner is, like, very not okay. I mean, obviously, we're talking about a scale, right? But, yeah, just that idea that you can't express how you feel about people, like, I think and I don't wanna I don't wanna impress upon anybody that we don't, like, celebrate monogamy because it's
Yeah, we're not here to judge anyone's relationship style.
no, like, we're not here to yuck anyone's yum,
Yeah.
but it's more like, just have you thought about it? I think for me,
Mm.
that's always it. It's like, have you thought about this? Have you
Mhm.
thought about this?
Mhm. Mhm.
Especially if something in life doesn't quite feel right.
Yeah, so any relationship style is better when it's a conscious choice, right? And monogamy is can be really amazing. It can be a really good container for folks. You can contain erotic energy instead of allowing it to flow outside of the relationship, and that can be a really beautiful practice. Um, but when we kind of make this taboo against our partner having erotic feelings for other people, it creates this like forbidden fruit situation, which can be really challenging. Some folks just don't feel inspired to express erotic energy with other people once they're in a relationship. And so, like, it took me a long time to realize that it wasn't that, that everyone wanted to express erotic energy outside of their relationship and that, I was unique in that way. But yeah, like, and monogamy serves some people so well and can be such a beautiful container. But it being the default assumption about how relationships should be and how they're going to work best is what I'm working to untangle.
Absolutely. And I mean, you can't get everything for one person, but like in general, but with that's friendships. And I guess we can move more into like relationship anarchy and talking about the different forms of non-monogamy in a second. But um yeah, like I'm completely blanking on what I was about to say. It felt like a really important statement. And I'm sure it is. I'm sure it'll come up later if it's actually important. But anyways,
Yeah,
uh,
but I think I can add to this. Erotic energy is very unique. It's not the same as, it has its own unique quality, although we can also argue that erotic energy imbues everything. And wanting to pursue an erotic connection with another human that you're attracted to is a unique experience. And so learning to navigate the desire for that experience in a more nuanced way, I think is like what we're trying to get at here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess what I wanted to touch on was the feeling of, like like the forbidden fruit, right? That when something's forbidden, sometimes we want it more, and sometimes what I love, because 'cause I'm also in a non-monogamous relationship, it looks very different to your non-monogamous relationship
Mhm.
because we have our own boundaries and rules and thoughts and feelings
Mhm.
around it and different goals. But like, I loved that just even when we're not really practicing non-monogamy at all, we're very much in our, like, divine union kind of vibe of, like, really trying to dive deep into, like, our very special sexual relationship,
Hmm.
me and my partner, like, I love that it's always on the table, that I can
Hmm.
always know that that possibility is there, and that's often enough for me. I don't need to express it, I don't need to chase it. I
Hmm.
find some people, like, they're in a beautiful partnership and they're on dating apps, and, like, that's not for me. Unless I'm, like, really feeling something like, "Oh, I really want a dom to come, like, put me in his dungeon this month." Like, you know? Like, I that's but to each their own. Anyway,
Absolutely. Yeah, and your situation is very, like a lot. I work with people all along this spectrum of erotic autonomy, and where you've arrived at with your partner is this is a really common desire to keep like do you call your partner like a primary partner?
yeah, so
Yeah.
we're in a, yeah, primary relationship, and we have a bunch of different, you know, stuff around it, but basically the idea is, like, we don't actually fully date people, at least yet, outside of our
Hmm.
partnership. It's more sexual experiences, and, yeah, the erotic autonomy is a great way to put that. And yeah, we really want to develop, like, we almost have, like, this monogamous core, but this, like, concept of non-monogamy that gives us so much space and freedom and autonomy.
Mhm. And this is a very popular kind of way to engage with non-monogamy, and a lot of people I work with are looking to develop this sort of relationship. So, yeah, I mean, this is like a this is I'm very happy for you. Yeah, I love seeing you with your partner, and I'm happy you're able to express your erotic autonomy.
Yeah, yeah, I love it. So, yeah, I would love, especially because this is something I only learned about, like, recently, the difference and what it means between, like, swingers and non-monogamy, even, like, non-monogamy versus polyamory, which I think are 2 different things. Hierarchical polyamory, which we talked on, and one of my favorites is relationship anarchy. I'm wondering if you could speak to, like, all those different versions.
I can, yeah. I would say that my area of specialty is more in partnered polyamory, like whether that's more of like a descriptive hierarchy situation or more of a primary partner situation. Um, and the way that I like to describe this, it comes from a book called Polysecure by Jessica Fern, which I absolutely recommend without reservations. And the way that she describes it is she divides high and low sexual exclusivity from high and low emotional exclusivity. So it looks like a grid, and then the different relationship styles show up in terms of high or low sexual or emotional exclusivity. So something like swinging is going to be high on the sexual non-exclusivity and low on the emotional non-exclusivity. Whereas polyamory is more about like less emotional and sexual exclusivity. And then monogamy is very much about high sexual and emotional exclusivity. Whereas solo polyamory and relationship anarchy tend to be more towards the low emotional and sexual exclusivity. I know that it's easier to look at. It sounds a little bit convoluted to ike about, but I like to think about differentiating these two topics, right? Emotional exclusivity and sexual exclusivity. And I also want to say that these are all just guidelines. Like, we're not replacing like one kind of strict relationship style with another, right? People are going to show up at different times in their lives at different points on this grid, right? It's super common for a monogamous couple to start out as swingers and then become more polyamorous, or the other way. It's really common for people to be solo polyamorous, or practice relationship anarchy at different chapters in their life. And I also want to add a caveat that someone who practices relationship anarchy or solo polyamory, they're completely capable of like long-term committed relationships. Like, saying that you want to have low emotional exclusivity does not cut out the ability to have long-lasting, committed, deep relationships. It's just that you're not looking to have that exclusively with just one person.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe I can talk a little bit about what those kind of look like in practice.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So with swinging, it's often cis het couples, like cisgendered heterosexual couples, practicing having these kind of parties, these like lifestyle events where you'll like go to a club or to a cruise or to like a house party, and there'll be kind of like everyone, wants to fuck each other kind of thing, like just kind of a big sex party. And so that's kind of what swinging looks like. And of course, there's many variations within this. And it's definitely not restricted to heterosexual couples. It's very common in the queer community as well. Whereas polyamory, it can look more like dating and relationships. So whether someone is single, like solo polyamory, or single, or they're in a partnership, you're kind of like dating and looking to like connect with someone, like kind of on all levels or on some levels. Just, you can like go on dates and do stuff and like do all the things that people normally do when they're dating. It's just with more than one person. And so, a couple can date someone, or like a single person can like date multiple people, and have this kind of understanding that these relationships are all unique and that they're all developing at different rates. And yeah, it's a really, really kind of like designer relationship situation.
Yeah, I like to think of non-monogamy. So, like, I think of myself as non-monogamous, not polyamorous.
Hmm.
And to me, that distinction is like, yeah, we're very, and I love this scale. I again, like, these just like single words that help you really understand what's going on with just like a couple of choice words, right? Like how just so like not talked about until you're in the space. And so, yeah, that word of like, okay, we are not emotionally open, but we're sexually open. We have more
Hmm.
sexual autonomy. And so, yeah, like the polyamorous side of it is like still something I'm really trying to work to decode inside me, that like still feels very, very threatening and very scary.
Hmm.
The idea of like my partner falling in love somewhere else, but having sex somewhere else and having other sexual experiences. Like, yes, of course I want this for you, especially if, we're apart for 2 months. Like, but yeah. And I also just wanted to like, because I just love relationship anarchy, and I've only met a couple people who like properly practice it.
Uh-huh.
And just like, so there's a word some people might have heard, like relationship smorgasbord, which I
Yes.
the
Yeah,
way.
the relationship anarchy smorgasbord. Yeah. Yeah. Do you wanna describe it as you understand it?
Okay, as I understand, and then you
Yeah.
if I'm wrong.
Okay.
So my understanding is like picture a cheese plate and like a giant board with all the different cheeses on it, and all the different cheeses are your different friends and your different people in your life, and this could be like your best friend and like just and everybody, right? And the idea is that you can like we've unconsciously subscribed so many different parts of our lives to our primary partner or our only partner, like buying a house,
Absolutely, yeah.
having a kid, getting a dog, getting a car. And the idea is that you could just have anybody in your life do those things with you. Or like have those different, so like people who are like, well, it's like I don't have one person that I prioritize above anybody else. Like all my friends are important to me and they all have like equal pull in my life and stuff like that. So yeah, just having everybody do anything and there's no limitations on that.
Okay, I love the people in my life as a cheese plate. Like, I definitely want a lot of nibbles. So, yes, absolutely. And yeah, I love the way that you described it, how any person in your life can take any of those roles, right? I think that that's kind of at the core of relationship anarchy is not prescribing to this person has to be this thing to me because of who they are or what relationship we already have, right? And so this really kind of opens up life to being created with the people that you find most suitable for yourself in that role, right? I think that that's really at the core of relationship anarchy. So I thought that was a beautiful description. And I also want to throw out one more term, which I think would be fun to talk about, which is monogamish.
Ah,
Yeah.
uh,
So I think that this is a really interesting cultural phenomena where folks want to be mostly monogamous, but maybe they want to give each other kind of a pass while they're on vacation, right? Or maybe they want to go to play parties, but only together, right? Or maybe, like kissing doesn't count. Right? So there's a lot of places to play in this relationship playground.
yeah, I like
Yeah.
that. It's a playground.
Yeah.
It's a
Yeah,
playground.
it's supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be fun. Oh my gosh, there was actually one of the most beautiful learnings, that my partner and I have taken from this, which, like, also I just love that it's, like, continuous self-improvement and self-development when you're
Absolutely.
always having to learn more and, like, you learn more about your partner, you learn more about yourself. Like, it's this vehicle for personal growth. And, yeah, we really touched on because something that I hadn't put together and again, this comes with the terms where, like, the right term for something just knocks you right in your head and goes, "Oh, that's what I meant." And so with, aftercare. Aftercare is a word that some of us don't know yet, which is, the care you give somebody after sex, for example, is aftercare, right? So, like,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah, so, like, I wanna cuddle for 15 minutes after sex, like, that's aftercare, and I love that, some in some spaces, that's discussed and negotiated before the sex even happens, right? Is like, "Well, what is our aftercare?" 'Cause sometimes it's also following up, right? Like, this is a person
Hmm.
I'm gonna have sex with right now, which means follow up with me in a week and just show me that care so that I can, like, anything, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely. That comes up a lot in the kink community, but I wish it was more common in other communities as well.
yeah,
Yeah,
this
and I think it's gaining popularity.
yes, I definitely think it is, and so this concept of aftercare,
Mm.
applying it to, our sexual experiences outside our primary partnership. Like, "Oh, so I need to describe exactly what aftercare I need after my partner has this specific experience because this one is particularly difficult for me emotionally." And it's his choice if he gives it to me or not, right? Like it's still he's autonomous in that, but at least he knows that this is what I would love to feel deeply connected and appreciated, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's that trust in your relationship piece, right? You're trusting your partner enough that you know that they care for you and that them wanting to express erotically with someone else does not mean that they don't care for you.
Yeah.
He cares for you very deeply and he's very invested in your relationship. And so you trust that when he returns to you and returns to your relationship, he's going to nurture you, is going to care for you. And I would also expand this idea of aftercare for the other people that you're engaging with too, because like I think it's really important to know that non-monogamy needs to take couples privilege into consideration. And so because in our society we have this idea that being in a couple is like a goal to achieve and is something that it's favored by society. We've got tax breaks, we've got special privileges, not to mention, social status, things like that. This is ultimately the roots of monogamy and marriage is to achieve social status, to blend financial assets, to basically like achieve more by being in a couple. And so I think it's really important not to forget about the people that we're engaging with are like whole ass people too, right? And so when I think of this idea of aftercare, I think of this idea for aftercare for all parties involved.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm glad you touched on that because that can be such a huge thing for the third person entering into a couple and their needs just aren't seen as important.
Yes.
But I like to think of it as there's four different entities there, right? There's each person in themselves and then there's the relationship itself. If you think of you plus another plus the relationship as three different entities, it really helps you kind of parse them out of like, okay, does my partner have what they need? Do I have what I need? And does our relationship have what it needs?
Yeah, and then there's, once you get into sort of like a triad shape, like a triangle where you've got three people, you start to have relationships to the relationship of the other people too. So each person has a relationship to the other person, but then they also have a relationship to the relationship between the two people. And so it gets really complex really fast.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that that's such a good thing to keep in mind, right? Is how can we care for the relationship and treating the relationship as its own entity worthy of nurturing, which is related to but different than nurturing your partner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so, okay, why does non-monogamy have such a bad rap then? Because like we hear about it so much in the news. There's so much more coming out about it. There's even like or like, oh, what's it called? They gave it a name where they're like, oh, we're practicing non-monogamy. We're just not admitting it to each other, right? Like there's infidelity happening, but so like why does it have such a bad rap attached to it? If sex feels painful, disconnected, or has a serious lack of orgasms and pleasure, it's time to pause. This isn't just about sex, it's about aliveness. Because when your body stops feeling safe to feel, you lose more than orgasms. You lose joy, turn on, creativity, and that sense of sparkly aliveness, that thing that gets you up out of bed in the morning that makes you excited for the day. But that can change starting now. That's why I created a totally free 15-minute pleasure breathwork called the Pleasure Portal. It's a guided, gentle, body-based experience to reconnect you to your turn-on and begin the process of rewiring your nervous system for pleasure. Forget forcing yourself to feel sexy or trying to fix your libido. This isn't a checklist or a how-to. It's about dropping into your body and letting it speak to you. This is about remembering that you were made to feel deeply, wildly, and sensually alive. This isn't a cute sex tip. It's just 15 minutes. You'll feel turned on in a whole new way, I promise you. Your body, emotions, and sensations will wake up. Whew, it is just a stunning piece of magic. It's 15 minutes and it might just change everything. So head on over to krishall.ca/thepleasureportal and download it for free.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. That's a really good question. I come upon this all the time in my work. There's a lot of reasons for this. Unfortunately, there are bad actors in non-monogamy, in the non-monogamous space. And one of the reasons that this can happen is because we don't have a good kind of playbook. We don't have a good understanding of how to do this well, right? So the current kind of lingo we're using for non-monogamy is CNM. The abbreviation is CNM, and that stands for consensual non-monogamy. And so the difference between consensual non-monogamy and cheating is that consent piece, right? And consent needs to be freely given. Consent is reversible. Ideally, consent is enthusiastic, although that is not always the case when someone's entering into non-monogamy, and we can talk about that more. And consent is specific and informed, too. So when we start to look at all of these factors, when not all of these factors are present, we don't truly have consent. And so, especially in an established relationship, there can be so much pressure to acquiesce to your partner. There can be a lot of pressure to conserve a public image. And then there's also individual pressures on us to act in a way that's gonna, that's gonna be advantageous for us in society, right? Like there's different pressures on men and women. There's different pressures on everyone along the gender spectrum. And so yeah, it can be really hard to do non-monogamy in a really good way. And it can be really easy to go towards non-monogamy because monogamy is not working for you or because you can't do it well. And so a lot of folks go to non-monogamy because monogamy is not working well for them. And then surprise, surprise, non-monogamy doesn't work. Or they go to non-monogamy because they don't like the rules and they don't like the structure of non-monogamy or of a monogamy rather. And so they go to non-monogamy, go to CNM to try to cover up the things that they're doing that don't fall within the, known and agreed upon confines of monogamy.
Yeah. I personally call that trauma-led non-monogamy.
Oh my God, I love that so much. And you're absolutely right. And I thank you for bringing trauma into it because absolutely no one is a bad actor. No one wakes up in the morning and is like, how can I make other people miserable, right? No one does that. We're all acting, consciously or unconsciously from places that, sometimes people can act really unconsciously from places that hurt. Right. And so, the compassion piece definitely needs to be there when we're talking about this. Yeah. And so, it's a challenging question. Like, why does non-monogamy have such a bad rap? And furthermore, a lot of the ideas about our society that are, not feminist and not egalitarian make their way into non-monogamy. And because we don't have an established idea of what true egalitarian relationships actually look like, and what true fairness looks like in relationships, there can be some really hard edges and some really hurt feelings that come up.
Yeah. So it's funny because talking about like the new prevalence of non-monogamy, it's funny having traveled this past year and like talked to so many people from so many different walks of life, and you forget until like you kind of leave this bubble that we currently both live in Vancouver, Canada, that like we live in a very non-monogamous community. Like there's a lot of it versus like it's actually almost more common to be non-monogamous than monogamous, like
Yeah.
in terms of a lot of our friends. And like so when you kind of step out of that bubble, you're like, "Oh, right. Like there's okay, right." But just I've just had the opportunity to witness a lot of people doing monogamy from a injured space, from a space of just whatever they're carrying into it. And so I think the number one question is like, well, why are you doing this? Why do you want to be non-monogamous? And that's like the first question I asked my partner because we started open. Like we were always, always open. That was always an intention between us and almost a necessity, right? Like both of us were like, we don't do full monogamy. And yeah, so like that intention always plays into it. Like, what is your intention here?
Hmm.
And then, okay, that makes sense to me. I can connect with that intention versus I can't connect with that intention and maybe this isn't the right fit.
Absolutely. I love that you brought that up. This why question, the why for non-monogamy, is one of the foundational elements that we explore in my Beyond Monogamy workshop. And because it's a very important one, it's very foundational for developing. It's actually also very foundational for developing relationship agreements. Yeah. But it's also foundational for engaging in monogamy in a consensual, ethical way.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah.
So like the why would be the first question to ask, like, is this for you? But is there
Mhm.
another question or questions you should ask yourself if it's like, is this for me? Like, even if you're in it or not in it?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, so what the question is how do you know if non-monogamy is for you, right? Like, what questions should you be asking yourself? Yeah, the why question I think is the most important. And then, like, are you ready to take responsibility for multiple relationships, right? Because relationships add a lot to our lives, and they're a lot of responsibility, right? Like when someone comes and trusts us with their vulnerability and trusts us with their time and their emotions and their body, we need to take responsibility for that, right? On all levels. Like there's the sexual health perspective, there's the emotional attunement perspective, there's the responsibility to make and keep agreements, which keeps people safe on all levels, both physical and emotional. And so really asking yourself if you're ready to take that on. Yeah. However, I would add a caveat to this. A lot of people say like, "Oh, I can't be monogamous because like I don't have the time." But, you make time for the things that you really love, right? And ideally, like what we really want from relationships is this nurturance, right? Is to be having people in our lives that fill us up, right? And yeah, so I think just asking yourself more so than do you have like time, it's more like do you have capacity to take responsibility? And also, are you willing to challenge the status quo? Because you spoke about how in Vancouver, British Columbia, we live in a very non-monogamous bubble, but we still encounter stigma against non-monogamy. Yeah, the first, if people aren't familiar with non-monogamy as a concept and as a practice, the first thing they kind of go to is what's wrong? Are you going to break up? Do you just not want to commit? Like, do you have a problem with commitment? And like, I think back to that, with non-monogamy, we love commitment so much, we want to commit to multiple people. So it's definitely not a lack of commitment. Yeah. So, and being prepared for, and I think the most important question here is like, do you want it? Do you really want it? Like, do you want it enough to take the risk? Because stepping outside of anything conventional is taking a risk. And so I think asking yourself, like, are you really ready for that?
Yeah. No, I love that. And, like, the fallacy of you don't have enough time for something, no, we all have the same amount of time in a day. It's whatever you prioritize. But I
Absolutely.
but I will say that some people I know they're non-monogamous, I'm like, I hear about their love lives. I'm like, "Do you do anything else but date?" Like, I know that's, like, maybe a little titch judgmental, but it's just, like, it's more like a joke of, like, "Wow, I'm really impressed that you have so much energy to put towards dating because I have a limited amount." And, once I've, like, filled my cup, I'm like, "Well, okay, yeah, I'm gonna move on to something different."
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think non-monogamy does really bring up this question of how much of my time do I want to spend in relationships, right? How much of my time do I want to spend dating? And if that is every single free second of my time I want to spend pursuing or enjoying someone romantically or erotically, power to ya. Power to ya. Erotic energy is a beautiful thing. And if you have an enormous capacity for that, I really admire you. That's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And that's not me. Like I'm very much like, I scale toward a little bit towards introversion. So, I definitely need time to myself. And also like friendships, non-erotic friendships are very important to me too. And so I definitely prioritize that in life. Yeah, but for some people that I know, like dating is kind of their hobby. Like they just want to spend their free time, like, engaging with people and going on dates and yeah, and getting sexy.
Yeah.
That's great.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that for
Yeah.
them. But I also,
Yeah.
like, I would love to ask the why question, right? Of just,
Yeah.
have you asked yourself why that's important to you? Because even sometimes those behaviors, even introversion, right? Like, I love always inquiring, like, okay, are you ready to ask yourself why this is important to you and why you engage in this practice? Because, yeah, even introversion can be a trauma response. But so needing to date people all the time and never wanting to be alone. So, I mean, that's a whole different
I
round.
think I think a whole other topic is how to differentiate trauma responses from, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think just really being sure that we can embrace the whole spectrum of erotic expression, right? And like embrace this whole spectrum of erotic expression and keep in mind that, different things are going to work for different people, and what works for me may not work for you. And, just take it all in.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what would you say to somebody who's, like, ready to open up and, like, wants to do this and, like, thought about but, like, isn't quite sure and there's a little bit worried?
Yeah. Well, my first question would be like, what are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Right? What are you afraid of? Yeah, and this really varies. This is a very different situation for someone who is currently single and they want to do non-monogamy as like a solo polyamory like lifestyle choice, or if they want to date, like if they want to date with the intention of finding a partner to be non-monogamous with. That's a kind of a different situation than a couple who already exists as a monogamous couple and wants to open the relationship, right? So maybe I can kind of like speak to both of those. And I think for the individual who's interested in dating non-monogamously, it's really like if you're nervous about it, I would say really ground into what makes you happy in all areas of your life, right? So we've talked a lot about erotic energy. I really do see life as a garden of erotic energy. Whatever you're into, whatever your hobbies are, whatever like lights you on fire, like if you're passionate about your work or if you're passionate about whatever, about gardening, about, climbing in mountains and jumping off of them and like, or exploring the depths of the sea, or just like, yeah, sitting quietly and making a beautiful home for yourself, like whatever that is, really ground into that because dating non-monogamously can come with a lot of challenges because of being up against this monogamous framework, right? And so not being afraid to, and it can also get conflated with like casual dating or hookup culture because people sort of assume, oh, non-monogamy, lacking commitment, therefore, I'm just going to kind of whatever, we're going to fuck around until I find someone that's going to be monogamous with me and then I'm going to ditch you, right? And so this is definitely a risk of developing relationships with new people in a non-monogamous way. And so I would say be really ready to ask people really deep questions. To ask them about their why for non-monogamy, to ask them what capacity they have for cultivating a relationship, right? And so, yeah, but really coming back to what it is that you're afraid of and what holds you back, and trying to make a plan to mitigate those risks. Yeah, and so that is true of the partnered situation as well. Is asking yourself what you're afraid of and making a plan to mitigate those risks, right? But the unique thing with an existing monogamous couple is when you have founded your relationship on the principles of monogamy, changing that agreement and changing that foundation, it's not just building an addition on your relationship house, it's changing the entire foundation and how the house itself is made up, right? And so really being prepared for a radical shift in the way that you relate,
Yeah.
right?
I love the way you said that too, because there's all that, like, the phrase, like, "Start open, stay open," and,
Mm,
like opening up later on. It's like there's even a lot of people who are like, "Okay, but we started open or sorry, we started closed intentionally.
mhm,
The always plan was to open it up later." And, like, to me, like, okay, I get that, I really get that, but I think yeah, like you said, like, the foundation is built upon that, like, that's one of the core pieces of the foundation of your relationship is whether or not you're open, and so, like, one of the things I mean, me and my partner really took time to develop a deep foundation and, like, had those hard conversations right away,
mhm,
and we were nerdy as hell about it, and we still check in every 4 months about it, but, like, that that foundation, what I personally would suggest, to be honest, is that you discuss non-monogamy as, like, a foundational piece, but then, like, if you're not ready for it yet, you have a season. Because I always talk about relationships with seasons. Like, this first season from X point to X point, we're going to only practice X amount of openness, right? But it's the mindset, I think, that the mindset shift can be so big when it goes from closed to open. But if it's always, the concept is always open, you're getting ready. Like you're almost like priming yourself and you get to slowly take steps and only do what feels good, right? Like don't do the hard stuff. Don't run at a brick wall and say, why does this hurt? This, like, just try. Why are you making life so hard for yourself? Don't do the hard stuff. Do the easy stuff. So,
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I love how you put that. And I love that you brought up relationship seasons because relationships naturally, long-term relationships naturally have different chapters, different seasons as we go through life, right? And so I do not see any issue with some seasons being more non-monogamous oriented and some seasons being more monogamously oriented, right? And I think that, yeah, I really love how you put that building foundational principles of non-monogamy in your relationship, but then also being open to starting with a monogamous container, I think is a really beautiful strategy. And I think that there is no good time and no bad time to open up a non-monogamous relationship. It's just the time you choose. The one recommendation I would make is if you're thinking about being non-monogamous, get what that looks like and you're already in a monogamous relationship. Get what that looks like figured out first before anyone meets anyone that they're wanting to date, right?
yeah.
So this may seem very obvious, but this is often how it happens, right? Is someone's in a monogamous relationship and then they meet someone that they're interested in, and then they come to their partner and they say, I met this person and we've been flirting and I'm interested in them and I want to open up the relationship so that we can pursue things, right? And this is not, this can absolutely be done. And it can put an additional pressure on the monogamous partner to open up. And that pressure can make it really hard to feel fully in your embodied consent around an open relationship, right?
Mm.
And so I really do recommend having these conversations like way in advance, and especially before you involve someone who, you know, this kind of innocent person who developed a crush on someone who's in a relationship, and is very vulnerable. And so I think in order to preserve the safety of everyone, having these I love what you said about having these foundational non-monogamy discussions early on in the relationship. And then also like going slowly and recognizing what a radical shift it can be to open up if you have a foundation of monogamy.
Yeah, it's a huge shift. Yeah, like speaking as someone who's been that third person, and I feel like you probably have been too, like the person who has a crush and starts a little flirtation with somebody who's in a relationship, and they're like, oh, yeah, we're trying non monogamy. We're like opening up right now. And it's like, I hear that now and I run away because I'm like, that's not a safe environment for me. Like, you don't know what's up yet. And like, it's so common for that, like, flirtatious third person to get their heart broken because
Mhm.
all of a sudden the other partner is not okay, and it's like, "Oh,
Mhm.
but okay, like, ah," like, yeah, so having that foundation, oh my gosh, I was just, like, felt it so deeply in my bones that, like,
Mm.
foundation before anybody gets a crush because
Mhm.
right, and this is why, like, I think I mean, that is a radical idea, I know that, but the radical idea of always having that conversation at the forefront of your conversations when you're forming a partnership. Like, how do we deal with non-monogamy? How to deal with the reality of life that we are sexual fucking beings. Don't keep it in our pants because that's how we were biologically designed. Like, you don't have the conversation at, like, point 0, point neutral. It's going to up. There's no I don't know that there's any relationship ever that never had this conversation come up of, like, a flirtation, a desire, like, it's like, I don't even think it's possible. Like, maybe some. there might be some exceptions.
Well, I think that it's good to keep in mind that this is a values discussion, right? And we often have, like, when we're getting close to someone and we're thinking about getting into like a life partnership with them, we talk about things like, are we going to have kids? What are finances going to look like? Are we going to travel? What's your relationship to your family? And am I going to be integrated there, right? We have these foundational discussions on other topics. And I think that now that non-monogamy is in the cultural zeitgeist, it definitely makes sense to touch on that as you're, establishing a partnership. But I really also don't want to exclude people who are already in a partnership and haven't done that. If non-monogamy is new to you, then there's no way that you could have had that check-in with your partner in the beginning. And this is why I think it's so important, if you're curious about it, to kind of get out ahead of it. And maybe if you're not even curious about it, that might be like something interesting to talk about, right? Now, this conversation itself can be like a relationship erupting, disrupting talk, right? So even the idea of introducing non-monogamy into your relationship can be very, very hard for people to hear, because immediately they go into this place of like, oh, I'm not good enough for you. You don't want me anymore. Right?
Well, that's
Yeah.
how, like, it honestly, I felt it in my body when you said, like, your partner comes home one day and is just like, "I have a crush. I want to explore non-monogamy." Is
Mm.
That's so triggering to the jealousy centers in our brain. That's like, oh, like, there's somebody, like, right? Like, instead of just the concept, right? Starting from a foundation of, why is this important to you? Instead of, yeah, there's someone else I kinda just wanna play around with, or, like, someone else I have emotions for. That is so much harder than, at my core, I am a curiously non-monogamous person, or monogamish, or, like, this is a value to me that I want, right? Like, it shifts so much in
Mm.
the way you bring it up.
Mm. Yeah, and it can be a really hard conversation, And so I think having this, like, if you do want to broach this conversation, having a soft start can be really helpful. Yeah, and we can talk a little bit more about communication strategies, but recognizing that you and your partner may be on very different pages. Also, you may not be.
Is your self-pleasure practice, your masturbation, quickly getting off with a vibrator, or is it a full-body spiritual experience of healing and joy? I promise this is actually possible. That's why I'm obsessed with Wands, a gorgeous, women-owned Canadian brand that makes ethically sourced crystal pleasure tools. Think yoni eggs, G-spot wands, and toys that actually help you feel more alive, connected to your body, and more orgasmic than ever before. And yes, I do have a discount code just for you, Kris10, for 10% off at checkout. Vibrators are great, but they often stimulate externally and way too fast, bypassing the slow, internal, emotional unwinding that deeper pleasure requires. Crystal wands and yoni eggs don't just get you off, they get you into your body and can actually facilitate deeper healing. There is so much healing to be had in sexual practices, and one of the safest and easiest ways is to do that when you're doing your pleasure alone. Your body is capable of so much pleasure, and if you feel a little, hey, hey, oh, that's cool if it's all you want, but I just want you to know that there is more. When you go slow, touch intentionally, feel what arises, trust the process, your body surrenders. How many of us have just wanted to feel surrendered in sex? That's where the real pleasure is. You start having deeper orgasms. You cry after release because something long held finally let go. You look forward to self-pleasure because it's not just about climax, it's about coming home to your body. So head on over to wands.com, that's wands with 2 A's, and use code Kris10 at checkout to grab 10% off your first order. Your sacred pleasure practice is calling.
And so I think that, like, finding a way that my like top tip in this situation, if you want to kind of test the waters with your partner for non-monogamy and you've never talked about it before, would be kind of mentioning like really casually, right? Like, oh, like I was listening to this podcast the other day and, someone was interviewed about, and she's a non-monogamy coach or whatever. Like, what do you think of that? Or, like pick something from the news, like, oh, this like celebrity. Well, celebrities are often very poor examples of non-monogamy, I must say. But yeah, like kind of trying to find a way to bring it up that's low pressure, and then if your partner like shoots it down right away, you don't have to give up and just think, oh, like we'll never be open. It might just be that they've never thought about it before, right? And they have all these assumptions. So, yeah, like having that conversation in a soft way can be really useful. And also, you'd be surprised how many people have thought about it. It's estimated that at least 1 in 5 people in North America has done some kind of non-monogamy, consensual non-monogamy at some point in their life. And so it's very common. It's much more common than we think. And so this desire to explore outside of your relationship is also very common. And so, yeah, like don't be surprised. And also people can change their minds about it too. So yeah, so don't give up if you wanna try, if you wanna test the waters with your partner.
Absolutely. I love that. Just like the soft open, like, right? Yeah. Because coming in with, hey, I have a crush on somebody. I really want to do non monogamy now is a really hard open. That's like coming in at level 11.
That's a hard opening, yeah, and I would really like encourage the person who is in that situation. Thank you for your honesty, first of all. So coming to your partner at all and saying you want to try non-monogamy instead of like carrying on a secret relationship, that takes a lot of courage. So first of all, thank you for your honesty, but then also keeping in mind that um you really have to tread carefully. And also if you're finding this capacity inside you to express erotic energy outside of your relationship, it's probably not going to be limited to just this one person that you have a crush on too, right? So it's good to think about it like holistically. So instead of like I have a crush on this person and I must make it work with this person, like focus on what it is that you like about that person and focus on keeping your current relationship safe and then kind of letting it unfold as it will unfold, right? Like if you like this person and you feel a strong connection to them, there's lots of ways to express that, right? And keeping in mind that you really need to balance the needs of your partner because this can be a really hard conversation.
Yeah, right? Showing care, showing up with so much love, showing up with, like, compassion,
Yeah.
instead of, like, "This is what I want." It's and yeah, right? Like, kind of the realization that if you want this with one person, then that desire is there, and I also, like I I have a dear friend of mine who's monogamous and, had desires outside of their partnership and started to feel a lot of shame around it.
Yeah.
I wanna normalize that, like, that is actually the most normal human thing to
Yeah.
loving one person. Like, we don't have one friend, we have so many friends.
Yeah.
The capacity to love is so
Yeah.
big,
Yeah.
right? And, like but I really wanna touch on because I feel like this is where so many couples struggle, especially in the beginning, is, like, the unequal desire for polyamory. So often it's like one person wants it and one person doesn't. So
Mhm.
like, they've talked about it, they've thought about it, they're at this discussion point, and, like, that desire is unequal. What would you suggest?
This is a challenge, absolutely. I would say get professional help. So, in that situation, I would really recommend bringing in a coach or a counselor, um, you know, uh, some kind of external party, some kind of professional to help you through because this is a really big relationship challenge, right? I would say that this is very similar to wanting to have kids versus not wanting to have kids. Like this is a very big values mismatch in a relationship, right? And so I would say approach it the way you would approach any other big values mismatch that's been discovered in a relationship. And really, like with this specific one, it really does help to look at jealousy for its individual components. Now, I like to think of jealousy rather than an emotion in and of itself, being it's usually some combination of fear, of insecurity, maybe of like beliefs and values. And so looking at what those different components are and looking at why, like the individual whys for why someone wants non-monogamy and why someone wants monogamy, and seeing if you can kind of break it down into smaller pieces, figure out where there's actually overlap and where there's some differences, right? And so in the situation of this kind of, in this situation with the mismatched desires, figuring out like what the non-monogamous person wants, right? Like are there like sexual needs that are not getting fulfilled? Is there like a desire for like an emotional connection outside of the relationship, right? And kind of figuring out what those different kind of components are. And then figuring out for a person who's more inclined to monogamy, like what it is about monogamy, what it offers them, right? So like, does it offer them a sense of safety? Does it offer them a sense of security? Does the idea of their partner fucking someone else just give them a big ick?
Mm.
You know? And so, and if it's that, like there is a lot of work that can be done to shift those mindsets, like either around shift your mindset around monogamy, right? And in either direction. Like I'm not saying that one person has to go one way or the other person has to go the other way. Like it really is about figuring out where those overlaps are. Like because the assumption can be if you want non-monogamy, then the relationship is not working. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes someone wants non-monogamy as a way to get out of a relationship that they don't want to end, whether that's a conscious or subconscious desire, right? And so figuring that out, or if that's not the case, figuring out what it is about that relationship that makes you want to be there, right? Figuring out how to trust that relationship and trust the desire to be with this person and figure out what's unique about your relationship that you really value, right? Like, what is it that you value about this partnership? What is it that you value about your partner that's unique and that's going to be different from any other partnership that you're going to develop, right? And so I think it really causes you to examine the relationship that you're already in and appreciate it in new ways.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh,
That's ideal.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
the idea. And it's funny because I thought about doing the same thing for, yeah, like where do we live? Do we want kids? Do we want
Mhm.
marriage? All those other different really big decisions in life.
Mhm.
I never really thought of it the same way of like, yeah, break it down into like, what is this giving you? What are the different things you want? And are there ways you can match and breach those desires, even though the label you attach to the top of the column of desires is different?
Yes.
Love that.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to jealousy, I love that framing of, like, what are the different components to the jealousy? Because 'Cause you're right, like, jealousy is a massive emotion, so much attached to it. Even if you get the, like, are you jealous from an emotional standpoint or from that sexual standpoint? 'Cause one of them is probably where you're more insecure, which means you're less open to your partner engaging in those activities with
Mhm.
others.
Mhm. Absolutely. And figuring out and so this is where the like emotional and versus sexual exclusivity tool can come in, right? Yeah, and then there are so many versions of combination monogamous and non-monogamous relationships, right? Like there can be, like we talked about, like the vacation pass, stuff like that. And I want to just go back to like validating if a person is having like a lot of resistance to non-monogamy. That's totally understandable. Yeah, it's totally understandable. I mean, when we grow up, every movie that we ever watch has this idea that like, oh, like, you're the one for me. Right? And so when we grow up with this, like very much in our psyche and swimming in the water of monogamy, it's really hard for us to know and to actually embody that stepping outside of that can be safe and can be joyful and can be harmonious.
I think it's the safety piece more than anything else, right? Like,
Mhm.
it
Yeah.
always goes back down to safety. You could be feeling so many things, but it's about feeling safe and feeling loved and feeling like you belong. Those some of our top 3 relationship and sexual needs. And so, yeah, this idea that I'm fully aware that the things I've chosen and the things I value in my relationship is because I want a certain level for me of like baseline safety in my primary relationship. Like
Mhm.
like, it also allows me to, like, kind of match into society a little bit more, right? Like, you were talking
Mhm.
about being right? Like, that that we are it's kind of like when you present as, a heterosexual relationship, like, we're not, but, we present that way, and so
Mhm.
yeah. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
but yeah, so as we as we wrap up here, oh my gosh, this has been a wonderful conversation. I have one more question for you, and then we'll see if there's anything else you wanna touch on. Uh,
Sure.
and so this one last question is, like, because I think people talk so much about jealousy when it comes to, um, non-monogamy, and we've touched on that, and I love the way that we've kinda spoken to it, but it's one of the things. What's really most important, in my opinion, is the communication piece, which I know
Mm.
a little of, like, what are, like, some of your biggest, like, "Oh, this communication hack freaking worked."
What a great question. So, communication, like heart-centered, honest communication done with a regulated nervous system goes so far in any kind of relationship, especially a romantic one. So, my communication, so I will get into the tips and the practical ones, but let's talk from a philosophy level. So, I think communication needs to start with yourself. So, it needs to start with self empathy. It needs to start with having a deep understanding of yourself and having compassion for yourself too. Understanding what your needs are and being able to be compassionate with yourself in the vulnerability of not getting those needs met. Yeah, these core needs like to be loved, to be seen, the need for connection, and also the need for autonomy, right? These are all universal human needs that we can all relate to when it gets into that really, really deep level, right? I need you to pick up your socks off the floor is not an example of a core need, right? Or I need you to give me the freedom to, go fuck around, that's also not a core need, right? Yeah, that might be more like the need to be loved and the need to be seen and the need for freedom, right? So I think that getting to that level where you deeply understand yourself is foundational. And then getting to the point where you truly, truly want to see your partner at that level as well. And you're willing to ask the questions and do the work and get really deep with them to get to their core layers, right? And so, in order to do that, in order to actualize this philosophy, communicating while you have a regulated nervous system is key. So, figuring out how to pick the right set and setting for your communication, and also knowing that you can take breaks. So, if you feel yourself getting really activated, you can take a break, you can come back when you're feeling more regulated, right? And I would caution not to take too much of a break that it actually like gets in the way of the communication that needs to happen, but not being afraid to take these conversations in bite-sized pieces. And reflective listening, I think, is one of the most important things in communication. So, hearing your partner out, hearing what they have to say, and then saying, it sounds like you feel, or what I heard you say is, and then summarizing what you heard back to them to show that you truly understand.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think that skill can go so far in deepening conversations.
Yeah, it's a huge one, the mirroring. The mirroring
Mhm.
of, like, "What I heard you say is," and you repeat it back, and they go, "Wait, that's not what I said at all." And it's like, "Great, cool. I understood wrong then. So before
Yeah.
we continue on with the rest of this conversation, not understanding each other,
Yeah.
what did you mean to say?"
Absolutely. Absolutely. I know. It's so simple and it's so revolutionary. Yeah. And then I would say also with that is being really careful to track criticism, shame, and shutdown. Yeah. So tracking criticism, any kind of criticism of your partner, tracking shame, either in yourself or your partner, feeling ashamed of how you feel, or throwing shame on them for how they are or how they feel, and shutting down. So, it's fine, whatever, do what you want, you know, or I don't want to talk about this. Let's just default to monogamy, right? Like those shutting down can be a really hard thing to, yeah, to navigate with your partner. And so I think like tracking those things is really important.
Yeah. No, I love
Yeah.
that. that
Yeah.
whole spectrum of like, okay, track those within yourself, track this partner, try to pause if you notice them. And I think really like the thing that comes up for me here is uh, just where can you add more curiosity? It's
Mhm.
it's about curiosity, like, and like, we're so quick in so many ways within ourselves, within communication with others to jump towards statements that are actually full of judgment instead
Mhm.
of curiosity, right? Like, "Why do you feel like, oh, I'm curious, like, why do you feel this way?" Instead of like, "You shouldn't feel that way."
How could you possibly feel that way?
"Oh, I'm so sad you feel that way." Like, get to the deeper why.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I think this could segue nicely into kind of my top tips on how to keep a primary relationship healthy, if that's what you're in, or any relationship healthy, really. But I'm talking more about like a long term relationship. Um, so it turns out that sex and friendship are very important in long term relationships, and I would reframe that sex piece as intimacy. So making time for intimacy, and then also making time to do things together that you enjoy, to really enjoy each other's company. So like remember to have fun together. Sometimes if we're in like a nesting partnership, if we're kind of just doing like day-to-day tasks, if we have kids, if we have, real like ass adult responsibilities, it can get to be so that you're not really like enjoying novel experiences together and not really like having fun together anymore, right? And relationships are supposed to be fun. So if you want to try non-monogamy, you definitely need to be cultivating your existing relationship in the way that you would cultivate a new relationship, right? So, like if you can make time for date nights, if you can dress up for each other, and then also if you can give each other space to do things separately too. So, like go and whatever, have your experiences, whatever you want to do, and then, come back and talk about it. And then you touched on relationship check-ins too, and I wanted to echo that regular preemptive relationship check-ins are super important. So, yeah, like I go over like kind of how to do these in my work with people, but yeah, just kind of having different areas of your life that you're checking in about. Yeah, and making sure to stay connected, really. That's what it's all about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay, well, as we wrap up, we could keep talking, but I do want to wrap up because yeah, it's been a rich and amazing conversation. I've learned a lot. Um, and yeah, so is there anything else that you feel like we didn't touch on that you like really want to be a part of this conversation?
Mm, I think just like assume nothing. Be intentional, talk about everything. Don't assume you know what your partner thinks. Don't assume that just because your relationship is, a certain way, it has to be that way forever. And just, yeah, just like stay curious.
Yes, I love that. Oh, okay. Well, if people want to find you, if people want to work with you, how would they do so?
Yeah, so my practice is called Non-Monogamy Coaching Vancouver. So non-monogamycoachingvancouver.com is a great place to find me. You can sign up for my newsletter, which is a good way to keep up to date on my current offerings. So I'm offering a workshop series in the fall, and also I'm offer one-on-one coaching or coaching for couples and groups throughout the year. And yeah, if you get on my newsletter, that can be a great way to stay connected. And you can also find me on Instagram at Non-Monogamy Coaching Vancouver.
Amazing. Okay, well, thank you so, so much for coming on today, Megan. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. I really enjoyed talking to you. I thought that was a really kind of beautiful synthesis of ideas and passions. So thank you so much for having me on.
Thanks for tuning in to I'll Have What She's Having. If you love this episode, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with a friend, leave a review, or shout it from the rooftops, preferably mid-orgasm. If you want to go deeper, join me at krishall.ca for group programs, private coaching, and more pleasure-packed resources. And remember, your pleasure is your power. So go out there and flirt with life itself.